Welcome to Earl Stewart on Cars.
One of the biggest things for resale value is the volume of fleet sales. Now, this is an inside thing. The industry understands it. Car dealers and manufacturers understand fleet. Now, fleet means a car that's sold oftentimes, believe it or not, below actual cost, sometimes below the manufacturer's cost. Manufacturers use the large fleets, Hertz, Avis, National, Enterprise. They buy millions of cars. The percentage of the production and sales is significant. Now, for Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, I'm looking at a sheet here I printed out this morning, fleet sales year-to-date through August. 32% of Ford's sales so far in the first 8 months of this year are to rental companies. Now, these are either losing deals or they are break-even or very, very little profit. So you ask, well, why would Ford sell cars to Hertz or Avis or anybody else below cost, or truly below cost? To keep the plants running. It's very expensive when demand drops, retail demand drops. It's very expensive to have to close the plant and lay off workers. You know, with unions today, oftentimes you have to pay the worker whether he's there or not if you lay him off. Or if you don't have to pay 100% of their wages, you have to pay a significant portion of it. And the cost of shutting the plant down, these huge expensive presses and manufacturing machines to close them, turn them off, and then restart them and open the plant, you're talking millions and millions of dollars. So the manufacturer would rather sell Hertz a car at $500 under their actual cost and keep the plant going. It would be cheaper than to have to close a plant and restart it in 6 months. So that's what happens. Retail demand slacks off, and they go to the fleets and they make them an offer they can't refuse, and they sell these cars dirt cheap, sometimes thousands of dollars below cost, and this devalues the brand and lowers the resale value. The imports, I'm talking about domestic brands versus Asian brands or European brands, because remember, Toyotas and Hondas and Kias and the rest of them are built in this country now, or Mexico, or someplace else. It's a global market. I'm talking about domestic brand names. Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. I told you Ford, 32% of their total sales are fleet. General Motors, 27%. And Chrysler's tied with 27%. Now, guess what American Honda sells fleet? Now, Honda, as you know, has a very high resale value. Honda's fleet sales are 2%. So there's no comparison. Hyundai and Kia, 9%. Toyota and Nissan, 16%. And that's compared to 32% for Ford, and as I said, 27% for General Motors and Chrysler. So that's the reason that the resale value of a Honda is so much higher than the resale value of Ford. And of course, this translates into higher trade-in allowance when you go to buy another Honda, and less trade-in allowance when you go to buy another Ford. And also with leases, because when the leasing residuals, and the residual is what the AIG, actually, the leasing guru, the Bible of all leases, they wrote the book, AIG Company, forecast leases 3-4 years hence. And when they forecast it, they look at the number of fleet sales, and then they guess. So if they say your car is going to be worth, this particular car is going to be worth a lot of money in 3 years, then you have a high residual, and that means that you amortize the cost of the lease over a much smaller amount, and so your lease payment is lower. So that's the reason you can lease a Honda for a lot less than you can lease a Ford, and you can lease a Toyota for less than you can lease a Chrysler. Combination of quality problems and also the huge fleet sales that the domestics seem to jump into, but foreign brands, the Asian brands, don't seem to do that. You wouldn't believe some of the deals that Ford and GM and Chrysler cut the rental car companies. Oftentimes, they'll give them guaranteed buybacks. You know, they'll sell them the car, and they'll guarantee to buy it back at a high price 6 months or a year or 2 years later. They'll give them large rebates, which is essentially cutting the price of the car below cost. So they'll even lease them cars at an unreasonably low rate. The other reason is that Honda and Toyota and Kia and Hyundai, they don't want to sell the cars to the fleets because they have to cut the price. They'd rather sell them to the dealer and let the dealer retail them. And that's a luxury that the Hyundais and the Kias and the Hondas and the Toyotas can afford, because they have a high demand for their product. So low demand translates into, I got to sell these cars somehow. They sell them to the fleets. They cut the price, and it's just like houses. If the housing market is depressed because people are selling houses at depressed prices, and that's exactly what happens with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Earl Stewart.